The bond between a mother and her child is one of the most fundamental things in nature. But what happens when a mother's body, which is supposed to protect her baby, actually turns against it? Well, that's what we're digging into today, the fascinating and kind of scary biology behind Rh incompatibility. It really does sound like something straight out of a movie, right? A mother's own immune system, her personal bodyguard, misidentifying her own baby as some kind of threat. I mean, how on earth is that even possible? Well, the answer has nothing to do with feelings or intentions. It all comes down to pure biology, a tiny, invisible difference on the surface of our red blood cells that can, under just the right circumstances, create a major conflict. Okay, so to really get how this all works, we have to start with the basics, the simple pluses and minuses that define our blood types. So here it is, the official definition. This whole situation only happens under these very specific conditions. The mom has to be Rh negative, and the baby has to be Rh positive. But what does Rh positive or negative even mean? Let's break it down. It's actually all about a specific protein, an antigen, called the Rh factor. It's pretty simple. If your red blood cells have this protein on their surface, you're Rh positive. If you don't have it, you're Rh negative. And here's the kicker. The gene for being Rh positive is dominant. So if you have an Rh negative mom and an Rh positive dad, there's a really good chance they'll have an Rh positive baby. And that's where the story begins. All right, so you've got this simple mismatch. Now, the big question is, how does that flip the switch on the body's powerful defense system, causing it to make such a huge mistake? Okay, so here's how it goes down. The first step is exposure. A tiny amount of the baby's Rh positive blood sneaks into the mother's bloodstream. Her immune system, doing its job, recognizes this protein as a foreign invader. And then comes the third step, antibody creation. Her body starts building up an army of antibodies to fight it off. This entire process, from exposure to building an army, is called sensitization. So you're probably wondering, how does this blood mixing even happen? Well, the most common time is actually during delivery. But it can also happen because of trauma to the abdomen or during certain medical procedures like an amniocentesis, basically any event that might compromise that barrier between mom and baby. Now, this timeline is absolutely key to understanding the whole thing. See, during that first pregnancy with an Rh positive baby, the mother's body is really just learning. It's building the factory, creating that immune memory. So the first baby is usually totally fine. But look at what happens with the second Rh positive baby. Now her immune system is primed and ready. It's got those antibodies pre-made, and they can cross the placenta and start attacking the new baby's red blood cells right from the get-go. And that, of course, brings us to the really serious part of this. What exactly happens to the baby when its own mother's immune system is on the attack? The result is a really serious condition called hemolytic disease of the fetus and newborn, or HDFN for short. If you break down the name, hemo means blood and lytic means to break or burst. So the mother's antibodies are literally causing her baby's red blood cells to explode. And this destruction kicks off a really dangerous chain reaction. First, the baby becomes severely anemic because it doesn't have enough red blood cells to carry oxygen. Then, as the body tries to break down all those destroyed cells, a yellow substance called bilirubin builds up, causing severe jaundice. All the while, the baby's tiny liver and spleen are working overtime trying to pump out new red blood cells, and they become swollen and dangerously enlarged. Now, a little bit of jaundice is pretty normal for newborns, but in these cases, the bilirubin levels can get so high they become toxic. If that excess bilirubin gets into the brain, it can cause a rare but devastating and totally permanent type of brain damage called kernicterus. In the absolute worst-case scenarios, all of that anemia and organ stream leads to a condition called hydrops fetalis. The baby's whole body swells up with fluid, which can lead to heart failure and, tragically, even intrauterine death. It really shows you just how critical it is to manage this condition. So, how do doctors even know this is happening? Well, they use two really important tests. There's the indirect Coombs test, which checks the mother's blood to see if she's created those attacking antibodies. And then there's the direct Coombs test, which is done on the baby's blood to see if those antibodies have already attached themselves to the red blood cells. Okay, after all of that heavy stuff, here comes the good news. The really, really good news. This is genuinely one of modern medicine's greatest success stories. It's the story of how we figured out how to outsmart the immune system. The whole strategy is built on this simple but totally brilliant idea. Why try to fight the immune response once it starts? Instead, let's just prevent it from ever learning to attack in the first place. Stop the mother's body from ever becoming sensitized. And this is the magic number. To work, this preventative treatment has to be given within 72 hours of any potential exposure, and especially after childbirth. That window is absolutely critical. The solution comes in an injection called anti-D immunoglobulin, also known as RHIG. The best way to think about it is like a super stealthy cleanup crew. The shot contains antibodies that go into the mother's system, find any of the baby's Rh-positive blood cells that might be floating around, and get rid of them. All before her own immune system even notices they're there. No recognition, no long-term antibody memory, problem solved. And because this works so well, it's now just standard medical practice. Every Rh-negative mother will usually get a protective shot around 28 weeks into her pregnancy, just in case. And then she'll get another one after delivery if the baby turns out to be Rh-positive. It's also given after any event, like a car accident that might have caused any blood to mix. It's a shield for every pregnancy. And honestly, the result is nothing short of incredible. This one preventative shot has basically turned Rh incompatibility from what was once a common cause of tragedy and disability into a condition that is almost always safely and routinely managed. It is a true triumph of medicine. You know, the story of Rh incompatibility is just this powerful reminder of all the complex, invisible rules that are running our bodies behind the scenes. And it really makes you wonder, right? What other hidden biological mismatches are out there, shaping our health and our lives in ways we're only just beginning to understand, and hopefully to solve?